Well, police are reportedly close to an arrest in the murder of Chandra Levi. In fact, they have issued a warrant for his arrest, right?
And this coming nearly a decade after the Washington intern mysteriously disappeared. She was jogging in Washington's Rock Creek Park. So what does this mean for the case? Well, let's bring in forensic pathologist Dr. Michael Bodden, who conducted the second autopsy on Chandra Levi's remains. Doctor, great to see you. Let's put up on the board some of the circumstantial evidence. I'm not going to run through all of it, but on the very day that she disappeared, May 1st, 2001, Gwandiki, who is now the suspect, he didn't show up for work, and then he attacks two other women, same location, same M.O. They're jogging, and then he allegedly confesses to an inmate. Did you locate any physical evidence that might implicate him or anybody else?
Well, at the second autopsy, we were able to find a broken tooth, which would be indication that she'd been beaten about the face, as the other two women had been, and she also had a fractured hyoid bone in the neck, which would indicate that the cause of death was strangulation.
Gwandiki apparently had confessed to another inmate, and you know, here we are in 2009, and it's sort of frustrating, and I would imagine for you it would be frustrating as well, because you conducted this autopsy, and I know that you become very involved in any murder case, especially unsolved ones, that you're involved with. I mean, your gut, what does it tell you as far as his involvement pertaining to the evidence that you saw?
The problem with the evidence, Julie, was that it was about 10 months, 10, 11 months before the skeletonized remains were found. There were clothing there. If this body had been found quickly, May, June, when they were searching for the body, there certainly would have been evidence of a struggle, evidence of hair, blood, perhaps semen from the perpetrator. But because of the delay in finding the remains, when the clothing and the skeleton remains were found, there was no evidence, trace evidence, that could tie the death to any person. So the one thing we do have is that there is a similar modus operandi, that is injuries, the two other women who were injured in the same place, the injuries to the face, but no DNA and no specific trace evidence that's going to tie her death to a particular person, which is why I think it's taken so long for the police to come to this conclusion.
You've testified in so many cases, and as you know, generally other assaults are not admissible evidence unless they are so similar, almost identical, that they establish what the law calls a pattern of conduct. In your mind, is there a pattern of conduct here that implicates this guy?
It's consistent with this fellow, Greg. I don't think one could pick out a specific pattern here and say it can only relate to the person they have now. They have to have had other evidence now in order to arrest him, such as another eyewitness, such as other people that he's made statements to. A single statement to a prisoner, a jailhouse confession, can be helpful, but it also is difficult to rely on that in the courtroom.
Yeah, it's inherently suspect, as they say. Right, because he has a motive. But if he wants something in exchange, and oftentimes inmates just make it up.
Yeah, there may be, see, the problem is, as of when I was involved 8 years ago, there was no trace evidence found on the clothing. There was clothing at the scene, but some of the clothing was tied in knots, and it may be that the crime lab now, with the more sophisticated studies, may be able to find some DNA evidence or hairs in the wrapped clothing that was not able to be seen 8 years ago, that would tie it directly to him. And I'm sure they're looking very carefully at all the clothing that was found at the scene of Chandra, and she put up a struggle, so that there should be some trace evidence there that could be found today that might not have been found 8 years ago.
All right, Dr. Michael Bodden, many thanks, sir.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you, Julie.